I'm not the only one seeing that, right?
Now, I'm pretty sure that lamp is looking at me.
So I don't have enough questions to actually do another Q&A, so I think I'm just going to let them build up for a little bit. And once I get enough questions, I'll do another Q&A video. Until then, I'm just going to go back to the regular style, and we're going to go ahead and pin this page, and that'll just help keep the paper in place. Let's go ahead and grab that spare journal just to prop up the page, and now we should be ready to draw. So let's go ahead and start sketching out some of the guidelines. This will just make it a little bit easier for me when I'm painting everything. I do sometimes lose some of those guidelines when I'm painting, especially when you're using gouache paint. When you add enough layers, those pencil markings start disappearing very quickly. So I always make sure to do really light passes just so I don't lose those guidelines. And when I don't need them anymore, that's when I really start adding in the really dark colors. Now, if you choose to use something like a watered down acrylic, you'll actually lose those guidelines a lot quicker. So do keep that in mind when you're painting. It's all about adding small layers at a time. That'll help give a lot of texture to your drawing. Right here, you're going to see I'm just going to take the journal away just to go dry it. And you can use something like a heat gun. I'm just using a hairdryer. That works just as well. Right here, it's going to be my second pass for the weathering. And again, it's all about adding those layers. And don't be too concerned what it looks like when it's wet. When it dries, it's going to be significantly lighter. And because I haven't done it in a while, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of white markings here and there. And of course, on top of the drawings itself. This will just help separate it from that page. For the title part, I'm going to be using a brush pen, and that'll give you a nice smooth look. For the symbol on top, I'm just going to be using a red pen.
That's 100% gonna bleed. Good thing I don't have to fix it.
And the reason I'm using a red pen is because I know that that's going to be able to smear really well. That way it gives the illusion of it being a little bit older than what it actually is. Of course, this is going to have its drawbacks, and it's going to bleed over to the next page.
Oh, whoa, that's really not good. And it bled on 2 pages.
But this page was lacking in weathering, so this kind of works out. And so whenever I do any of the cleanups, I use acrylic because it goes over everything. If you try to use something like a gouache paint, watercolors, you'll end up seeing the color still peeking through. So you need something that's much more opaque. If you don't know what the word opaque means, it just means something more solid. So you'll have your 2 terminologies, opaque and transparent. And transparent is kind of self-explanatory. In the correction spot here, I was a little heavy-handed with some of that weathering, which I think is going to be okay. It still kind of works out. It's nothing that I'm too worried about.
Now we're starting to look professional. Look, we got key lights and everything in here now.
So I've been spending way too much time on Instagram, and I started realizing that if I'm really going to take these videos more serious, that I'll actually need to start having proper lighting in this room. Originally, I only had 2 little lights. I had a little salt lamp and like a little small desk lamp, and it was working out to a certain degree. It was really difficult for me to see in the room, but when I edited the video, it would look really nice. Now the problem with that is I was really straining my eyes the whole time, and it was difficult for me to see what I was working on. So to correct that issue, I turned on the big overhead light above me, but then I would have really harsh shadows on top of my journal, which is fine at the time, but after watching a few videos, I realized I can make it look a lot nicer. Now I didn't go buy any special type of lights, I just got a bunch of lamps that I had around the house, and tried my best to set it up in a way where it looked a little more professional. So I hope the color change isn't too much of a distraction, because I actually kind of like the more warm tone look to it. I feel like it looks a little more inviting. It does make the room significantly warmer though, but it kind of works out just because it is winter and I refuse to turn on the heater. So here I'm just going to be using the Uni pen. I'm finding that it's one of the best pens right now to use because no matter how much water you throw on top of it, it never bleeds afterwards.
I didn't even know we had this.
And I'm thinking for this right here, because the page next to it, the leprechaun drawing, has like these little sparkles, and to me I feel like that would be some type of glitter. So I was thinking I could add just a little bit to the page, nothing too overbearing, but just a little smear of glitter here and there. For the first page right there, the leprechaun, I'll add very little bit, and then I'll add a few more drops onto the other side. Now this one right here is a much more trust the process type of drawing, because the majority of it did feel kind of silly and it didn't look like it was going to pan out all that well. So sometimes you just need to actually just finish the drawing before you can judge it. It's very easy to dismiss a drawing, especially when it's really early on, but seeing as I already don't have enough pages for this journal, I really can't sacrifice pages. It's around this time when I noticed why the drawing probably just doesn't look right to me, and it's probably because the background doesn't match the drawing. After adding the first layer of weathering, I immediately noticed that yes, it was just that. The reason my drawing was looking off was because the background was significantly lighter, and I find it looks a little bit nicer if the background has a more mid-tone to it to complement the colors of the actual drawing itself. And so now that I realize that that was my issue, I can continue with the actual drawing itself. And right here, I'm going to be using a number 8 pen, and that's just going to be doing all the outlines. Now, of course, 8 pen isn't thick enough, so I'm going to be going over it a couple times, just to add a variety of line weight to the drawing. Keeping everything the same thickness kind of looks a little dull after a while, and I've seen it work in different occasions, but I personally like to add a little bit of variety to it. Now, for all the lines inside the mane and the tail, I'm going to be using a number 1 pen. For this part, I'm using a flicking motion and keeping that center untouched. This will help give an illusion to like a sheen look. For those sparkles on top, I'm thinking if I add just a little bit of a white acrylic streak to it, I can really get a nice effect on that. I want to keep that really subtle because I don't want to take away from the actual drawing itself. The point of these highlights are to complement the drawing itself, but not to overtake it. And right here, I'm just going to be adding a couple extra highlights to the tail and touching up any little line work that I might have missed, or that I might have gone over with the white acrylic. Now in the actual drawing, it almost looks like it has a double shadow, so I'm going to be adding a second one on top of this one right here. And I do have to be careful here, because if you let 2 layers of gouache paint sit on top of each other, especially if one of them's wet, you'll accidentally have them bleed onto each other. So after adding that second layer, I have to immediately hit it with the hairdryer. This will just lock in any of those changes, without affecting any previous layers. Now as far as those gold coins down there, and I'm using the word gold loosely because they're made of plastic, the drawing itself has just a single color on top of itself. So to keep it very similar to that 4-leaf clover on the opposite side, just a little bit of highlights and 2 tones will be all that I need. And because I haven't used the red Sharpie in a while, I'm going to go ahead and use it on this spot. The drawings are really small, so I can't risk having this bleed or smear in the future. They're very small, intricate designs, and that can be easily lost if they smear. Now on camera that looks more brown, but it is a more red in real life. It's just not as vibrant as that pen red, which is a good thing because it just gives a variety of colors. So right here, I'm just using a regular pen to write out everything, and I did run into one mistake right here. I actually made that drawing a little too close and I didn't give myself enough room, which can be easily remedied. I'm just going to use a little bit of acrylic and I'm going to push it over just a little bit. Now it's not supposed to be so close to the edge of the page, but I think it's going to be okay here. It's not too much of an important detail, and the idea is still there, so I think it's okay. So now that that part's fixed up, let's go ahead and finish off writing everything in here. And then after we write out everything, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of that glitter, and this part of the page is going to have a lot more sitting on it. Almost as if he got really close and some of that glitter just sprinkled onto the page. And just to knock it back down, I'm going to add a little bit of extra weathering on top of it. This will just help make it look a little more subtle and not so prominent on the actual page itself. Now it's difficult to see and it's really only visible in real life, but when you move the page around, it does have a little bit of a sheen to that bottom page. Just a small detail that only the reader will see.
So I've seen a few good guesses already, but I think you guys are overthinking it. All the clues I gave you led up to the ring. That's clue 1 through 3. Number 4 has to do specifically with this ring right here. You have to find the bird using the ring. Also, I just got tagged in this really cool Journal 2 recreation from Coral GT. It came out amazing. If anyone else wants to tag me in some stuff, by all means. I'll always try my best to look at everything.